Bhante, the understanding, or it could be interpreted that in both the suttas today, um, is it possible that there is some kind of an oral transmission of enlightenment that the Buddha or any of the teachers give? Is it like, it's not like a translation or a discourse, but does some level of, I don't know how to put it. It's like in modern day terminology, people talk about energy transmission. You know what I mean?
You mean like the Indian concept of Shaktipat,
That's right.
where the master touches the disciple?
And the person is enlightened or
Yeah.
reaches some level of enlightenment. So I'm just wondering, is there anywhere in the suttas, is there something like oral transmission that just by talk, people realize great things?
There is something like that. I don't know about the phrase oral transmission, but in many suttas, when the Buddha gives a discourse, those who are listening, especially when the Buddha sees that somebody is mature, then he'll give the discourse that's directed specifically to that person's capacities and faculties, and then that person will achieve one of the levels of realization just on the spot. And sometimes this happens even with those who, at least in this life, haven't done any what we call formal meditation practice.
Right.
But they must have accumulated what we call the paramis over many previous lives, and so their faculties are quite mature, quite ripe. And then I would assume that the Buddha's physical presence generates like an enormous spiritual energy. So we don't see anything like the Shaktipat there, but when the Buddha is teaching, somehow he's able to direct the teaching precisely to that person, and just through the precision of the Buddha's discourse and his own spiritual power, the person who listens achieves realization. Yeah, sometimes that even goes up to the attainment of arahantship.
Really?
Yeah, so that there are some discourses, I think one that we'll come to, it says that as the Buddha was speaking this discourse, the minds of the 60 monks who were listening, their minds were freed from the asavas.
But there's previous work, obviously, that those monks
Oh
have
yeah,
already
yeah.
attained.
I mean, they would have done.
It's not like a miracle.
No, nothing is like a miracle.
Yeah.
The only miracles are flying through the sky.
Hello?
Yeah.
It was on. Bhante, the question I have is, I don't know if I heard it correctly, but you said something about a stream enterer before, and that he never may go beyond that point. Somehow
I didn't say that a stream enterer might not go beyond that point. What I said is that this is in relation to Anatta Pindika. I don't recall any suttas which speak about him in that life going beyond stream entry. So that it seems that through his life, of course, he would have continued as a stream enterer. But I don't see any sutta which said that he achieved the stage of a once returner.
So basically a stream enterer could be a stream enterer for a very long time.
Yeah,
Possibly.
Yeah, one can continue through the rest of one's life as a stream enterer, even for several lives. But once one becomes a stream enterer, then one is bound to reach full liberation.
At some point.
It said in a maximum of 7 lives. Of course, it seems like a long time to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, Richard, I just want to, there's a book just occurred to me during lunch. It's called The Social Dimension of Early Buddhism. It might have some discussion of the satis or shreshis there.
Yes. They also, regarding the 7 lifetime rule for stream enterers,
Yeah.
the thing that strikes me about that is, you see, that's also what was the rule for changing castes in Hindu India at the time. There's the idea was that people who wanted to advance in caste could do so, but it would take 7 lifetimes. So I think that the reason that, or that is traditionally, that number, that is 7 lifetimes, was something which was plausible at the time to Indians because of the Hindu rule that it took 7 lifetimes to change castes.
I think one might have to look into the chronology of texts there, because one would have to see whether the texts which present the idea that it takes 7 lifetimes to change caste preceded the time of the Buddha or came after. This I don't know.
Good.
But it could be that they all came after, and just 7 is a number. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that a stream enterer has to go through 7 lives. Somebody could go from stream entry to arahant in this life, as many of the Buddha's disciples did. Or they can go in this life from stream enterer to once returner to non-returner. So 7 lives is only given as the maximum, not as a fixed.
Yeah, I can understand that, but I would think about that, see, if the Buddha said, or the Buddha said that it takes more than 7 lives,
Yeah.
the Hindu response would be, well, we can make it to another caste in 7 lifetimes, why would we wait?
Hi, Bhante. Just when you're on the path, it's since we talked about divine beings earlier.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the sutta that says where the divine beings can assist you on a Noble Eightfold Path, or is it just you yourself, your own effort?
Yeah. When I use the expression divine beings, I'm not speaking about anything that corresponds to the theistic idea of a god.
Oh yeah, no, I mean
Yeah.
like the devas and.
Yeah, there are actually accounts that come in the text of sometimes, I'm thinking of a sutta where it's called the Bahya Sutta. There was an ascetic who thought that he was an arahant, and then, he must have lived sometime in that belief. Then it said that a deity came to him and told him, you are not an arhat or even on the path to arahantship. And then that sort of shocked him, and then he must have realized it was true. Then he asked, well, where can I find an arhat? Then the deity said, well, if you go to Savatthi, there's somebody there that they call the Buddha, you should see him.
Okay.
Yeah, so, there are accounts like that in the suttas. How this would work in our own real life. It could be that deities, that they don't appear to us in their supernatural flesh and blood, but sometimes ideas come into our mind
Right.
that help us in our development. And where do these ideas come from? It might just come seemingly out of nowhere. Like, go see that person. He could give you advice. That idea suddenly comes, or I should go see this person.
Right.
And that idea could be planted in our minds without our knowing it by a deity.
Thanks.
But even though such things could take place, maybe the Buddha doesn't speak about them very much, because if he did, people would start to get lazy and think, I don't really have to do anything. I just, offer some incense and flowers to the deity.
Right. Maybe it's a combination of your own effort and maybe a little bit of assistance.
Yeah, I think that there can be some spiritual beings in other dimensions who are helping us along the path, just through infusing us with their spiritual energy or suggesting ideas to us.
And then there's the idea of some beings that are trying to do the opposite, right?
Oh yeah,
like
those are
Mara.
the demonic beings, or the Mara and his assistants.
Thank you.
Bhante, I have a question about the jhanas in terms of the notion of absorption,
Yeah,
as opposed to the idea of a trance state.
yeah.
Sometimes I've seen it, connected to the idea of a trance, but absorption, you want us to still be fully alert and mindful?
Yeah, I don't like the rendering of trance at
No,
all.
that's why I want to get
I don't know.
clarification about.
Yeah,
why
I don't know
absorb-
why some of the early translators used trance, but I think it's completely fallen out of favor now. Because in jhana, there's clear awareness. It's not going into a state below the threshold of ordinary consciousness, but rather above ordinary consciousness.
So it's just a question of how when you are meditating, you feel you're free of thought, you sort of have bare attention to your breath, how you might distinguish that from a state of more deeper absorption.
No, there are other phenomena that come that indicate absorption. It's not just being focused one-pointedly on the object, but what's called the jhana factors have to arise, and then the mind has to remain unwavering on that object, so that the sense of the ordinary sensory world surrounding us has passed out, has vanished. That the mind is, maybe absorption gives the sense,
Thank you.
but it's a kind of sustained, deep sustained. And then it's accompanied by, well, even before one is into the full jhana, there's the arising of the qualities like joy and bliss. Okay, any further questions? Okay, if no further questions, then we'll stop for the day. We covered a lot of territory, 2 suttas today, but they were both short. And then next week, as I mentioned, we will take suttas, Sutta 44, a very controversial sutta, as you'll see. So stir up a little, we have to have like the coming attractions or preview. A point that's been debated even by contemporary Buddhists back and forth in learned journals, scholarly journals, and at the more popular level. And then Sutta number 45, which we could just take very briefly, 45. Did you say? Oh, I'm sorry. I said 45. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 144 and 145. Okay, so let us end then with 3 half bows again. Okay, 1, 2, 3.